You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Now that's the talking about yourself bit done, Jim. Let's get into this cricket discussion. And I chose some topics to talk about and discuss with you today. And for the first one, Jim, is about broadcasting within cricket and how it's evolved over the years and the generations up until the present day. And you've been in the job for more than 50 years, from the early 70s until now. You've seen a lot of change. But going way back in the game's history, it's changed from radio, television, the way that journalists and people write about the game. It's changed so many ways. And obviously in radio commentary boxes now, Jim, you have cameras in your face capturing reactions and posting on social media about what happens during a game to get to get your reaction of particular moments that happen in a game. So it's all that social media world now, and it's very different. Some people like it, some people don't. They prefer the old ways rather than the modern new way of thinking, but we have to keep evolving and changing. Otherwise, you don't make any progress or you don't change to what the world is wanting from broadcasting within cricket. And so, Jim, what differences have you noticed from your time in the media covering cricket from when you started until now, more than 50 years in the business?
It's probably the quality of information. If you go back, having a scorer in the commentary box was a big breakthrough to try and give more information via the scorer to the broadcaster and to the audience about what had happened. And now we're getting all this analysis on top of it. So that adds something to the game, as long as it's not overdone. Still essentially, in terms of radio, whether it's going out on the internet or the wireless or whatever it may be going, you're still doing what you did when you started. That is telling people what the score is, what's going on in the game, and a sense of anticipation. And around that, we've probably become more conversational and looking at a bit more humour. There's a tendency for more self-indulgence and talking peripherally about what's going on rather than the event itself. And that's fine when not much is happening. Roebuck was very good on bringing in all these other issues, but also giving some weight to it. Don't trivialise the game. So I like to think, the ABC's maintaining a standard in terms of what it delivers to the audience, that it is worth listening to, that it isn't just a piss up in a pub. It's better than that. So, it's changed in what it can bring to the audience because of technology. Like we take SMSs from people, emails, we got all this going on. But as I say, you still come back to the basics. That is, people are coming and going. The audience isn't constant on the radio, so they need to be reminded of what has happened during the day as well as what's happening now. So, it's still quite a simple exercise, and you just don't want to be overrun by all the other stuff to the point where the audience is saying, just give us the bloody score, please.
Yes, that's very true. Do you think the standard of commentary on both radio and TV's declined or gotten better? Because some people say, I can't stand this commentator on TV. They yell, they shout too much. They don't let the pictures breathe on television, whereas on radio, you have license to do that because you can't see what's happening. But do you think the standards have declined or increased, Jim, in your time from when you started until now?
I think I think overall there are more pluses than minuses to the quality of the commentary on radio and television. pretty dry commentary on television when I was growing up. Some fellas were very good, but as a society, we're not as formal, and that shows on television and radio. Just look at it now compared to what I was growing up with in the 50s and 60s. We've evolved. We've got more mature conversations about so many things because we've got so much more information thrown at us. Probably an overload when you look at the influence of social media and all the other platforms that are going around with Instagram and X or Twitter. There's just a multitude of stuff. So you've got to have I reckon you need a very good filtering system to make it all work as a broadcaster. And most of the people who have played the game at a high level, and some others who have never played it, who are very good communicators or very good at drawing people out with the information, are making it an interesting game to watch. But I always go back to what the late Arthur Morris told me when I asked him one day. This is going back 20 odd years. I said, "So, Arthur, you watch the cricket on the TV?" "Oh, yeah, I always watch it." "What do you think of the commentary?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "The commentary on television." I said, "I don't listen to that. I can see it. I can see what's going on. I put my favourite music on." So we all have our way of absorbing what's coming out. And that was his way of managing it. And another way of managing it, because of the advertisements, I suppose, in part, it might be also what people on TV are saying, is that a lot of people got used to turning the sound down so they didn't have to worry about advertisements or voices they didn't particularly enjoy, and they could listen to the radio, which gave you a continuity of coverage which television very rarely can provide, other than, of course, Fox now, which goes on without breaks for ads, as free-to-air television does. But yeah, I yeah, I think I've said what I've said.
Yes, I think you summed it up there, Jim. But
Yeah.
Obviously, we've seen, whereas before it wasn't it was a rare occurrence, non-playing commentators come into broadcasting like yourself and Harsha Bogle, and there've been few more since who've come into the role of commentator, because back in the day there were all former players that played at various
Up to a point.
levels.
No, the ABC always had on TV and radio the straight man, as it were, and someone who was there to manage the broadcast and give the essential information, and then hand over to Lindsay Hassett, Frank Tyson, back in the days, to give their analysis. So that's pretty much how it's worked and still does on radio in particular.
Yes. What about former players that come from, stop playing, they come into the comm box and they give it a go, and, looking, from, doing something different apart from playing the game, learning a different skill. I think when I interviewed Mike Coward, he said they're not produced enough in terms of...
No, they're not. That's probably true. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you say that?
Well, look, it's not for me to say, but I think depending on the personality of the people who are on, if you get a dominant type personality in there, it's unlikely that a producer who doesn't know the game as much is going to say something to influence that person. But having said that, there have always been producers. David Hill was the number one on Channel 9, who used to... It didn't matter who was doing what. If he didn't agree with what they were saying or the way they were saying it, I think that was the thing to be considered. And that's where Benno was such a good influence on television, because he'd try and advise, moderate, if asked, the style of the ex-player's presentation to make it sound a little little happier, more authentic, pleasing to the audience. You don't have to be shouting at them. You're just passing on information. And one of the reasons Benno was so good on television is because he paused, which gave far more dramatic impact than having a torrent of voices where you tend to get on the big bash a bit these days. People just talking over each other all the time. And I think that's not the way to go. So I wonder sometimes if they are produced, but that's their business. It's not mine. If I don't like the sound, I just turn the sound down anyway.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. You just grab the remote, just press mute, and then you just watch the
Yeah,
pictures.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Do you think it's one of those things, Jim, that now that we have two networks on television now for cricket rather than just one with Channel 9 back in the day, and now it's 7 and Fox, and then obviously other radio stations, ABC, SEN, and others calling the cricket. Do you think that the reason people are begrudged is because they want things to be what they were back when Channel 9 was in charge on television, or do you think it's good to have more options and more choices for people and different preferences in the media when it comes to covering cricket in Australia?
Well, it is what it is. Look, I'm mainly because if it's a test match, I'm there working, so I don't hear all this stuff. But yeah, I think we're the only country in the world that's got competing television stations. Okay, one's behind a paywall and one's public. If it's working in servicing the game and getting to a wider audience, well, you've got to say that's a tick in the box. And also with other radio stations than the ABC, which had exclusivity for a long while. Okay, yeah, if that's working for the game, people have got choice. That's not such a bad thing. So yeah, I don't know how long that'll last because particularly commercial organisations have to be making a profit unless they're a loss leader on the supermarket shelf, as it were. Which, I mean, someone once described to me about all these big television deals in football and Olympic Games and the rest of it. I said, how can they afford it? And he said they can't. It's a giant Ponzi scheme. But they don't want the other bloke down the road to be doing what they should be doing in order to drag an audience and hopefully hang on to it for the other programs that they put on. So that's the game in town. But every now and then, as we saw with Channel 9, decision was made, no, this is too expensive, we're getting out of it, we'll do the tennis instead. So these are the sort of commercial realities in a market which isn't nearly as big as it is in other places in the world. But I think it's important that the free-to-air market for major sport continues to exist, even if it's the politicians who have to ensure it, because I think the public deserve to have coverage of major sport without paying for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that should be always the aim, really, to make it accessible for everyone.
Well, it should, but it won't be. It'll change. It'll change.
That's the thing. So we might as well be grateful for what we have at the moment, I suppose. And
well, you are with the ABC on the radio. You're paying 6 cents a day or whatever it costs the ABC to be running every year. But yeah, and the good thing about ABC radio coverage is it's massive network. I mean, it's got the audience reach that no one else on radio has. And it's also available all over the world. We don't geo-block the coverage, so almost anyone can listen to it anywhere in the world.
Yes, absolutely. Female broadcasters, Jim, we've seen a lot more of them coming into the game to broadcast it at various levels in terms of writing about it, journalists, commentators. You worked alongside Alison Mitchell for this Ashes series this year on ABC. She's leading the way when it comes to female broadcasters in the game. There's a whole heap of others as well. How do you
Isha Gua
is making
as well.
Yes.
on television, and Alison's were working on both radio and television,
Yeah.
and I work with her every week, as it were, on this program on the BBC World Service called Stumped. So, again, the message is getting out there, and the coverage of what's going on around the world. It's got a global view, but perhaps more the subcontinent than elsewhere, with the service it provides through Akashvani, All India Radio, as it used to be.
Yeah. How do you see the future of female broadcasters in cricket, Jim? Are we going to see a lot more than we have at the moment, or do you think it's going to be a gradual improve as we progress throughout the years?
Oh, we're looking at the quality of the people I've mentioned, like Alison Mitchell and Inisha Gua. Yes, I'm sure we will be seeing more female, or hearing more female voices. I think that's inevitable, and that's a good thing. And particularly as the women's game, as Mel Jones is another one we should mention there. Particularly as the women's game has now got a profile it never had. And in terms of where Australia sits at the moment, you could argue that the Australian women's cricket team is our most successful national team. And I tend to judge these things in terms of the Australian team on the world market, rather than the sort of xenophobia of tribalism and club teams and the rest of it, which has its place. But I think the ultimate is playing for your country, and that's where cricket in particular is way out there in front of most others, other than soccer. Football obviously has its moments, although Australia's down the pecking order there. Rugby league, if you can argue that there's much of a global game. Rugby union, definitely. Alas, Aussie rules doesn't have that, but it has its own internecine battles going on, which arouse the emotions of a lot of people. So we're very fortunate here, because perhaps, as Trevor Bailey said many years ago, of our climate, that we can produce all these remarkable athletes.
Yes, or I think it was John Lewis in the Women's Ashes made those remarks about having time on the beach or something like that when the England women's team were out here for the Women's Ashes. So
didn't help them.
Sorry?
It didn't help the England women.
No, it didn't. It was not great series.
But there's a classic example. The level of comparatively preparation, athleticism, and skill. There's a huge gap, just like the Ashes we've just seen. I think England conned themselves into thinking they could just turn up with limited preparation and beat us with their skill. Well, sorry, folks, it doesn't work like that.
No, that's right. And we will discuss the Ashes a bit later on. We may have some people listening, Jim, to this episode or watching, and they want to get into broadcasting themselves and get into the media and get into covering all aspects of sport, but also maybe cricket. What advice would you give them, Jim, those young broadcasters coming through? What advice would you give them?
Oh, well, you've got to find a supporter, a way of getting your message across to somebody. So, it's a bit like the old salesman, I think, putting your foot in the door, trying to get to a place where you can be heard, and you need to be doing that by dint of what you can provide, your knowledge, your voice, the way you express yourself. Dare I say it, you almost need to be a little bit quirky, different, it seems these days. But it's just trying to find that entree, which is hard to do without, as I say, banging on the door. But at least these days you can do it yourself, as you are doing, Jack, by creating your own platform. So if you do it well enough to pick up an audience and, find a sponsor or two, I suppose, to make the thing pay for itself, you're on the way. So there's probably more opportunity now than there was when I started. You didn't have any of these sort of vehicles to drive you into the marketplace that you do today. So and just find something and give it a go, and try and find a signature tune if you can.
That's pretty good advice, Jim, and thanks for that. Certainly has motivated me to keep on going and keep plowing through my journey and covering cricket and media and all that stuff. So that's fantastic advice there, Jim. And for everyone listening and watching to this episode, we'll definitely take that on board and just give it a crack. Why not?
Give it a crack. That's right. Give it a crack.
There's nothing to lose.
Be confident, but be humble.
Yes, that's right.
Confident and humble, yeah.
That's absolutely right, Jim. Hi, everyone. Hope you enjoyed hearing Jim and I discuss broadcasting within cricket.